Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Rise Factor. Today, I have a very special guest joining me. Adam Joske is someone who I think, Adam, we just connected through socials initially. We've met up a couple of times and super excited that you are one of our incredible guest speakers at the BDM Summit 2026. So, a massive welcome, Adam, to the Rise Factor podcast.
Thank you. And I can't remember how we met either, but we speak a lot and I consider you a friend now. And we've been talking about collaborating on something. So it's good to be finally doing it.
Yeah, so finally doing a lot of things. So, Adam, for those that may not know who you are, who is Adam?
Who is Adam? Okay. So I live in Melbourne. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I was in sales in real estate for about 28 years. And now I'm a trainer and coach of salespeople and BDMs because I think they're very closely related. What else can I tell you? I was going to say my age, but I'm in my 50s. Been married 25 years this year, which is very exciting.
Very
Which means
exciting.
it's probably going to cost me some money. I've got to do something special for Audrey. Three kids, older kids, and two beautiful dogs. Or should I say, three beautiful kids and two dogs?
Either way. Yeah. Oh, you're such a beautiful person, Adam. What I really love about you is, there's so many times that the word authenticity gets thrown around in our profession, but you definitely are someone who, what you see is what you get, and just your values are really beautiful. And, you're traveling and you're still making such an impact. And I love seeing all of your contribution and just you being a genuine human in our industry, which is what I love.
Thank you.
So, Adam, one thing that, we've had so many synergies and conversations about before is database mining. And
Mm,
I feel like a lot of BDMs don't understand the gold mine of the database and the gold that they're already sitting on. So, why
yeah.
do you think the database mining is such an overlooked lead source?
Look, I think there's a few things. I'm obsessive about database, and I think that we're now we're in an industry both in sales and BDM work where everyone's always looking for new clients, and everyone's looking for the new person, and where's the new person, and let's do some lead generation, and I think that it's the largest area of our business is neglected, which is nurturing the people that we already know, and in sales, and I've spoken to Eric about database management. And the reason I got so obsessed about it was because when I was a salesperson, I'd sell a property for someone and they say, "Thank you, Adam and team. You guys were amazing. I'm never going anywhere else. Oh my God, you were so good." And then what happened is 5, 6, 7 years later, I'd see another real estate agent's board on the property. And I
Mm,
went, "Well, hang on a second. These people loved us. What's going on?" And then I started realizing that as time goes on, they forget about you. So you're amazing at the time. And as the years go on, and by the time year 4 and 5 comes around, you were just an agent who did the job. You weren't fantastic anymore. You're okay. And then they start interviewing agents again. So I got sick of this happening and I got sick of losing business. So I started developing systems where I meet someone, I put them into a system, and I can help. Today, part of my training and coaching business is I help people build systems around this. So if I meet you today, Sarah, I'm going to communicate with you forever,
mm.
and it's much more fun speaking to people ongoing through your career who you've got relationships with rather than using cold data, which is always a bit, you haven't got that warmth and you haven't got those relationships. So it's a much more fun place to be in.
Yeah, there was new statistics that were shared that saying now it takes like nearly 29 touch points for a consumer to, buy a
Yeah.
product or buy from someone. And so when we
Yes.
look at that, I mean, there's so many different factors that have contributed to why that is. But when you look at one person and that journey, like why does that journey just end once you've done that transaction or once you've onboarded them or listed, when they're still on their journey for wealth creation and growth, and for us to support them. So when we
Mm.
look at databases being an asset, what actually counts as your database, Adam?
Let me just say, I didn't answer the question correctly that you asked me before. So I'm just going to pick up on, you said, why don't people run databases better or more
Mm,
efficient with database, whatever you said. Um, and I think what the answer is to that question is database is long-term growth. So if I do a transaction with you today, Sarah, you may not rent out another property, you may not sell another property for 5, 6, 7 years. And database is about nurturing for that long term. And I think real estate agents, BDM salespeople, are we've got to have that next buzz. So where's the next bit of business?
Mm.
And you've got to chase that business. So you've got to chase that where's the next business. But that second part of the business should be, well, let's nurture those people long term. So, but I know certainly in sales, everyone's going, well, where's the next listing coming from? Where's that next listing from? And they're neglecting those people they already know.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as your other question goes, you need to explain the question to me or ask it again because I didn't
Yeah,
quite
that's all
understand what
right.
you're asking.
So what actually counts as your database?
What does that mean?
Okay, well, I believe that we've got like two different types of databases now, and actually one of them we talked about off air, right? I love how raw this is today, and I think our listeners are going to love it. But so you've got
But
your
this is going to get
database.
edited, I assume, isn't it?
No, it's not edited.
Oh,
No,
great.
it's
Okay.
real raw.
Fantastic. Okay, great.
We don't do it any other
You
way.
say, I don't know what you're talking about. That's great. Put that in.
It's all good. Hey, so we've got our database, meaning like our CRM, we've got our current clients in there, perhaps our pipeline that we're working on. And then we've also got another database, which is our social media, which is what we
Yeah.
were talking about this morning. And so I believe that we now aren't just dealing with one type of database, which a lot of people would look at it as their CRM. We're looking at another database of our social media and the people that we've got on there, perhaps that aren't in our CRM system yet. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Mm,
And I'm starting to look. I've only, and you know this about me because you've helped me a lot and given me a lot of advice on social media, which I've only started recently embracing, and it's been unbelievable. I think I said to you offline that the amount of business that I've written in the last 6 weeks where I've
mm,
really embraced it has been incredible. But yeah, I mean the two are very connected, and I'm starting to realize that. And I'm about to engage a team overseas to look at the people who are in my CRM
mm,
and start linking them to the database, or sorry, start linking them to the socials and inviting them to follow me, and
mm.
vice versa.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that they are two very different pieces.
Mm.
One piece I did particularly well for almost 30 years, and I've started to realize the other one is probably as important, if not more important, or probably of equal importance.
Yeah.
And I'm embracing that now.
Yeah. Adam, what do you think is the biggest mistake people make with using their CRM?
I think that, look, there's no doubt in my mind that the majority of agents that I meet, they use their CRM as a glorified address book.
Mm,
So it is there to put a phone number, an email, an address, and that's pretty much it. They all do so much more. And I think that the agents that I meet that use categories and they use tags well,
mm,
and they put people into certain categories depending on who they are or their relationship, so they can start target marketing to them.
mhm.
And what someone should receive by email or an EDM is different to what someone else should receive. So but to run a good CRM system, it takes time, and you've got to put the time aside to do it.
Mm,
And you've got to continually maintain it and keep it clean. And I know for myself in my business, I'd step out of the business once a week for probably 2 or 3 hours and check everyone I put in there this week, and have I tagged them correctly? Are they a Mrs., a Ms., a Miss? Have I put them in there correctly? I don't want to offend them. I want to make sure I've put them in there with clean data. If
yeah.
their name's Stephen, is it PH or is it a V? And I think the people who do this very well are obsessive about putting clean data and complete data, and
Mm.
then it becomes an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting that you say that, Adam, as well, because I think like there's no point having a large database if you're not talking to it or actively talking to it. And I actually heard from a BDM that was on stage and admittedly said that they don't put contacts into their CRM system. And so there was like so many red flags in my mind when I heard this and high performer, BDM, say
Mm.
this. Like, so if they don't get that listing, or even if they are getting that listing, then what happens after that if they're not going into their database or their CRM to continue that nurture cycle that essentially that we're talking about, making sure details are entered correctly. But how many missed opportunities are there? Because we know, Adam, someone that doesn't do a deal today doesn't mean that they're not going to do a deal with you in the future, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, you know this. I mean, how many times do you lose a listing and then they're unhappy with their property manager and come back to you? I mean, you know,
So many times.
imagine having a CRM and every time you lose a listing, you categorize them as lost listing,
Mm,
right? So then you can literally do a search and bring up all of your lost listings for the last 2 years. Let's say it's 20 or whatever it is. And then you can actually do an EDM or an email going out saying, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, even though you didn't select me to manage your property, I'm still here. If you ever want any advice or you want to have a chat with me in the future, I'm here."
mm,
Um, and that's what we were talking about earlier about being able to use categories and
mm.
put different people into different groups. Um, I've got no doubt, and you know this yourself, that if you did that and you nurtured these people and you sent them information about the rental laws and everything that's changing so much, as you know, it's so fluid,
Yeah.
they will come back to you one day. One day they're going to be unhappy with their property manager.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of there's a misconception I think out there as well that people think that, well, everyone is doing that. And we know,
Mm,
Adam, that
mm,
not
mm.
everyone is doing that inside their businesses. And there's so many ways now that you can get creative with um, talking to your database without actually physically picking up the phone and them still
Yep.
seeing your face, like embedding videos into your emails. And so like adding that personal touch with, I know some great operators that are doing that now. And something that I strongly suggest to my clients is don't just send out that email that looks like everybody else though. Like
Yeah.
have a strategy behind it, like show your face, continue to be present with them. And I think that's going to be a big point of difference continuing to go forward, not just like the campaigns or the emails. It's how they can spark that creativity and not look like everyone else that may be sending the email, or maybe they're not. And so
Mm.
with the property management agency, that agency hasn't updated that current owner about the new laws that we're talking about. You do. They're like, oh, already you're creating that doubt in that person's mind, going, well, how actually trained and proficient and efficient are my property management team if they're not even telling me this information?
Yeah. And if that's a great point. I mean, if you're telling people something that their own property manager is not,
Mm,
you're on the front foot. And I mean, I look at what's happened the last few weeks with the budget
yeah.
around negative gearing and capital gains tax. And I'm speaking to a lot of landlords and or vendors who actually don't understand it and they're very confused.
Mm,
And for your listeners, I mean, to be able to use AI now to write some articles, write some information, make people smarter and more educated, it's so easy these days.
yeah, absolutely. Well, that was going to be my next question is, if we know that our database is a current gold mine and we've got existing clients already there, then what conversations should we be having with them? Which are some of them that you just answered. And even like me, Adam, like some of the things I'm still confused about, to be honest. Like I don't think
Mm.
everyone has the answers, but I'm following other people and speaking to other people that do have those answers, like accountants and mortgage brokers. And they are a great way to even get them to come on a video or get them to come in your EDM to educate your existing clients, right? Like
Yeah, it's a
utilizing
great
other
point.
people's brains.
Third party experts are a great source of content.
Yeah, like what we're doing now.
Yeah, and I think that when you make a great point. If you bring in an accountant to talk about, well, you know, negative gearing, capital gains, what does it really mean? We've got an accountant coming on. Um, what I love about that is that it's independent for you. So it's not your view, it's not your
Mhm.
biased view because you're chasing business where you're going to say, look, everything's always rosy.
Mm.
It's someone independent who's an expert. So there's so much creativity you can do. It's just, there's no limits to the amount of information you can get out to people that's value add.
Yeah. I've been following some of the content that you've been doing and sharing recently. And so one of the things that I think that we don't do enough in property management and for BDMs is actually assist our current clients to buy again. So
To buy again, to buy a
yeah,
second
to
property.
buy a
Yep.
second property.
Yep.
And we know, and I mean, the government's even and said it as well. There's so many statistical data that's going out there that the average investor in Australia own one investment property, right? And Adam, you know, and you would have seen it over your time. I've seen it with my clients, is over time, they gain equity in their property that would allow them and assist them to buy another one. Now, by all means, yes, things have changed because of the recent changes, but there are still strategies that exist out there to help those people create opportunities to buy again. So with going back to our database and our current landlords, how can BDMs be having conversations with current clients to have that conversation and ask the question if they would buy again or reveal future opportunities?
Mm. It's a really good question. And it's interesting. I had this conversation with someone yesterday in a cafe in a meeting, and they said to me, look, no, it was an agent, and they said, no one's buying. Investors aren't buying anymore. The sales market is really tough. Clearance rates are under 50%. So basically more than half the properties certainly in Victoria, but I think same in New South Wales and across the board, more than half the properties are getting passed in. So prices have dropped significantly over the last few weeks, and they're going to continue to drop.
Mm.
But what I see is that there's a lot of fear out there where landlords are hesitant about buying because of the changes to capital gains and negative gearing, and that's for a whole another conversation. But I think that the amount of saving that a landlord can pick up today by having the prices reduced, landlords are actually probably in a better position than they would be if they could negatively gear ongoing. So I'm not sure if that makes sense, but
Yeah,
I
it
think
makes
the
sense.
benefits of prices dropping outweighs the changes in the laws.
Mm.
So I think that for BDMs to be able to educate themselves in this, and again, I come back to AI, I come back to things like ChatGPT or Claude, where it's so easy to educate. I mean, most of my education comes from just having conversations with AI. So I think for your BDMs to actually get onto AI and get some articles, read some articles, it's going to be very hard for them to convince people to buy a second property unless they know the nuances,
Mhm.
or they've got someone that they can refer, a great mortgage broker, a great accountant that they can refer who's an expert in
Sure.
that space. Um, but it's interesting what you say, because I think I read somewhere, and I'm not sure if this is right, that it was something like 20 or 30% of Australians who have one investment property have a second investment property. I was surprised it was that high. It may not be that high, but if it is close to that, it tells me that once someone has an investment property, they
Yeah.
understand the business,
Yeah.
and they're more inclined to buy something else.
Yeah, for sure. You know, one thing that you said earlier, which I would love to ask you this question, I think it is still relevant for BDMs because a lot of BDMs are working with the sales team, right? That the clearance rate for auctions. And my question is because typically in Australia, we have relied on auctions as predominantly a sales strategy. Do you think
Yeah.
now that that's going to change because of the changes that have come into effect about, you know, disclosing the reserve price prior to auction and things like that? Do you think that we're going to see more people not going to auction?
I think that in the short term, yes, I think that will happen.
Mm,
And I think that, look, I've been in the industry 30 years, as I said before, and I would say every 5 years there's been some legislation that has come in that
mm,
has rocked the industry.
mm,
And it's happened regularly. And every time it's happened, we've gone, oh my, how are we going to run business?
mm.
And what we've found is that it's found its own feet over time, and it's become the new normal. So I would suggest that in the short term, agents will be shell shocked, vendors will be shell shocked. A number of them will stay away from the auction process, but over time, it will become the norm, and they will adapt like they do to everything else,
Yeah.
and then it will run as per normal.
Okay. All right, next question, because I love that we've got a BDM and a sales brain here as well, yeah? When do you think a sales agent should introduce an investor buyer to the BDM?
I personally think that every single buyer that comes to a sales open for inspection,
Mhm.
when the agent is doing that call back on Monday or Tuesday and saying, thanks for coming through the open for inspection. Did you like the property? I think one of those questions that they should make standard should be, are you looking to buy a property for investment or something to live in?
Mm.
And good salespeople do this. And I think that, let's say a salesperson has 10 people through a property, and let's say 8 of them say, listen, I'm actually looking to live in it with my family, but 2 of them say I'm looking at investing. I think that those 2 people should be referred on to the property management department, for them to see if there's any quality lead there.
Awesome. I love that. Completely agree. And I think one thing that I learned, especially with working with a sales team of nearly 25 sales agents, was not all of those buyers that are investors that come through your open homes are going to buy a property with that agency. So if they don't buy through your agency, they're going to buy through another agency. And if the other agency hasn't introduced that property management department, and that property management department hasn't showcased value on how they can add value before they purchase, then I believe then the property manager or BDM that who does showcase that value and talks about things like what renters are looking for and the yield that that property would get or recommendations to increase the value of the rent will win the business.
Oh, 100%. And I think that, what you say is 100% correct. I think that, you can encourage salespeople as much as you can. And I've owned businesses before, to refer to the rental department. Most of them won't do that. So if a BDM on this listening to this can actually encourage salespeople to do it, knowing that most companies aren't going to do it, because the salespeople, we talked about this before, they chasing the next shiny toy, and
Mm.
referring to property management is not that next shiny toy for them. But if you can have a culture where that happens, you
Mm.
are so on the front foot, it's not funny.
Yeah. One thing that actually, I shouldn't say surprised at, but one thing that is common, Adam, is the BDM team not being present in the sales meetings, which I think
Mm.
is a really big disconnect when you're looking at an agency that does sales and property management. A couple of reasons is because the sales agents still need to be updated with the legislation in their state to advise their current clients who are investors effectively. Second of all, if they are going to be having conversations and it is a great investment opportunity, then they need to understand the requirements for, to get that property ready, for rent. And it also allows the BDMs and the property managers to listen at the activity that's happening
Mm.
in sales. What properties
Mm.
they've got coming on the market, what prices of properties are selling for, the activity at auctions, the conversations that are happening at the moment. And I believe that it's not happening enough. And I know this because of the clients that I work. And so for anyone listening that are BDMs and you have a sales team, get in those meetings. And also, Adam, I believe
100%.
that they should also talk. And this is something that I did with my BDMs that I worked with as well is every week, not only did we come into the sales meeting, we spoke 2 minutes. 2 minutes, it was a quick update, what was happening in the property management team, the results that we were getting, conversations that was happening. And what happened then, Adam, was that the sales team and the rental team, there wasn't a gap. It wasn't like sales team, rental team. We were a team. We were working together. People knew the property manager's name. The property managers knew the sales agent's name. And I think that's so important when working in an environment like that. What do you think?
Oh, I 100% agree with you. I think that in many, many businesses, there's a complete disconnect between the 2 departments.
Mm.
And what you say is spot on. And I can tell you what all the best businesses do. They have a sales meeting agenda, and they have their sales meeting usually 9:30 on a Monday is usually standard time. And on the agenda is new listings for the week, it's new sales for the week, new leads for the week. And on the agenda, there's property management leads for the week.
Mm.
And it's actually an agenda item rather than a casual conversation. And when you get to that point, the BDM is always sitting in that meeting, as you say, And it's so funny you say that because I see all the top performers do this. And the BDM literally talks, like you say, for 2 minutes and say, okay, guys, this is what I'm seeing in the rental market this week. These are our vacancy rates.
Mm,
Talking about legislation. And then at least the salespeople have got some idea of what they're talking about. And on
absolutely.
the flip side, like you say, the BDM has got an idea of what's happening in the market, and they have to know because you know what it's like. People are saying to BDMs, what's the market like in sales? And they need to know that. But as I say, the best companies, it's an agenda item, and I think any of your clients watching this, that BDM should be speaking to the director and saying, we need to add this to the agenda. I think it's an absolute must. And you, like you say, you need to link those two departments because they're not mutually exclusive. They're very much linked.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Adam, some fire questions. All right, so you're a BDM. You're going to be working your database and you're going to be making some calls to your current clients. What do you think are some questions that a BDM can be asking their current clients right now?
I think the first question that I see neglected a lot is, can I ask you a question, Sarah? I know you've got 10 Smith Street managed with us. Can I ask you, do you own any other properties?
Mm,
And it's a very simple question. And I think that BDMs who do that well, I mean, you know better than me that it's amazing how many times that will uncover something. Another good question is, are you happy with the management that our team's given you? Yes, fantastic. Can I ask, out of all your friends and family, who of those have got a rental property? Because I'd love to look after them and give them the absolute best possible service.
mm,
Have you got someone that I can have a conversation with? And
mhm,
if you sell it to them that it's not about you wanting the referral, but it's about the client because you know that you're going to look after them.
mm,
Um, I guess what I'm getting down to is asking for business is so important and not enough people do it.
mm,
Have you
mm.
got a second property? Have you considered buying a second property? Do you want to speak to our sales team about that? Do you want to speak to our accountant about that? Have you got a second property already? Let's have a conversation around that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing what conversations open up when you ask those direct questions. And I think a lot of BDMs who I've met over the years have been a little bit sheepish and shy in asking those questions, and they feel it's a bit direct.
Mm,
But in my experience, and it's the same with sales, the more direct that you can be with someone, the more they respect you for not wasting their time and talking business. And if I said to you, if I looked you in the eye, Sarah, and said, listen, we really need listings at the moment. We've got a fair few rental properties on the books. We've got a fair few tenants on the books or
mm,
renters, and we're really looking for more rental properties. Can I ask you, Sarah, is there anyone you know in your network who's got a property for investment that I can have a conversation with? And I
mm.
think that there's ways of asking that shouldn't be too uncomfortable, but I think a lot of BDMs have to get comfortable with asking those questions, asking for referrals.
Yeah. I think what I hear from that as well, Adam, and this is something that I had to master over time. I think like this is a skill that we learn is your relationship with selling. So, how is your relationship when you buy a product? And if someone, I'll give you an example, right? I think it's hilarious in a way, but every time I put petrol in my car, right? Every time I put petrol in my car and I go to pay, they always do something. I don't know if it's the same with you, but they always ask if you want to buy something that they've got on the counter or whatever. And it's
Do you want
just
some gum?
gum or whatever. There's chocolate that's two for $2, and it just comes out. It's like you said, it's direct. They obviously need to do that because they're trying to sell, more units, not just like the petrol. Sometimes I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, I need that gum, like what you said. Or sometimes like, no, thank you. But they still ask the question. And so what I believe is that you're always going to get a no if you don't ask the question. Right? The question is always going to be no if you don't ask the question. So what's the worst thing that happens? You ask the question, they say no. Well, you didn't ask the question anyway. So the question was no. Best case scenario is they say, yes, actually, I do know someone. And then everything changes. And so I believe that it is a mindset thing here that you need to get comfortable with selling essentially. And also looking at the relationship when you buy a product and how you feel when someone asks you if you want to buy something else. And now I'm not going to lie about this. Before I came into working in property management, I worked in retail and I worked at a very high volume menswear store. I was selling suits. And one of our KPIs was when we sold any product, we had an aim to get 4 units per transaction, right? So my aim was every
Let me guess. This tie would look fantastic with
this
that suit,
tie,
Adam.
socks, if they purchased shoes, was it like the shoe polish, like if it was pants, did they need a
Mm.
shirt with that? There was so many,
Leather conditioner or whatever it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
so many different variables. And so I got comfortable because I did that, or before I started in real estate.
But the reason you became comfortable with it, and I'm guessing a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable with that, but the reason you became comfortable with it was because of repetition.
Correct. It was the reps.
So you're
Yeah.
doing it so often because you're trained to do it. So you've trained to do it firstly, and then you practice it and practice it and practice it so much that it became automatic, right? So,
Yeah.
and when you practice it and it becomes automatic, it becomes very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so comfortable asking people if they've got a house to sell because I've done it so many times that for me in my brain, my real estate agent brain, hanging up from you, I would say to you, Sarah, thanks for chatting today. Can I ask you, do you know anyone thinking about selling the house?
Mm.
And for me, it's just there's no uncomfortableness in asking that
It doesn't
question
feel yuck.
because I've done
Yeah.
it so many times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and the other thing that repetition does is when you get those rejections, you know how to handle. Firstly, you build up a barrier, so you build up resilience. But also, as you get those objections and as you get those no's, you become better at handling those objections to the point where after a few weeks, there's nothing anyone can say to you that you haven't already heard before.
Yes,
So
that's right.
I talk about golf clubs, right? So someone throws an objection at you, you know exactly which club to pull out of your bag and hit it, right? If
Mm.
it's price, you pull out this club. If it's service, you pull out this club. And it doesn't take long before you know exactly which club for which objection. And then you become very, very comfortable. But you've got to start. Then you've got to practice.
Yes, great advice. Okay, Adam, database mining, because of, I guess, how human behavior has changed anyway. What do you believe, or in your opinion, do you think is working right now? A phone call, an email, or SMS, or is it a mixture of all three?
I think it's definitely a mixture of all three, and I'd probably add a fourth to that, which would be post.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that post is cumbersome, post is expensive. And I think, you're talking about, we talked before about categorizing your database. You might have, let's say you've got a rent roll of 1,000 people. You might say, okay, well, these 100 are my VIPs.
Mm-hmm.
They're more important to me than the other ones. So you might decide that you're going to do a monthly newsletter or report, might be quarterly, whatever you decide to do. Now you might say, okay, for these 100 VIPs, I'm going to post that. I'm going to get it printed professionally in glossy GSM paper, and I'm going to post for these top 100, and everyone else I'm going to email.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might decide I'm going to have a lunch or a function or whatever. I'm going to invite these 100 VIPs. So I've forgotten the question you asked me.
No, it was good. No, it was absolutely great. It was like phone, email, SMS, and then you
All
add
right, yeah, a
post. Yeah.
complete mix. And I think there's a danger in calling too much as well, because to me, I mean, I think every single landlord should be called once or twice a year by someone in the department personally. You know this better than me, but just to say, how are you going? Have you got any complaints? Talk to me about your experience. Is there anything you're not happy with? And, knowing there's problems that you can fix before you lose a property.
Mm.
But, one or two phone calls a year, I think, is probably ideal. And then the rest of it is a mix of the other avenues. But I think also, Sarah, that there's two types of marketing. There's property marketing, and then there's what I call content marketing. And property marketing, you might say, well, here's some properties that we've rented out that's similar to you. I just thought I'd send them to you. Here's some stuff about interest rates or new legislation. Content marketing might be, so and so high school's having a fete this week or in a month's time. Here's some information about the fete. Thought I'd share it with you. It's a great school and it's a great cause, and they're raising money for charity and whatever it is. I'm just making it up as I go along, but
Yeah.
I think it's really important to find that property marketing, but also try and become that community person that is sharing information in the area, and also gives you more content to put out without being too sales
Yeah,
person-y
like
all the
real estate,
time.
just real estate focused.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I mean, if you look at the real estate content, there's so much. You've got rental updates, market reports, interest rate changes, legislative changes, tax time reminders. At the moment, you've got end of financial
So
year
much.
planning, maintenance tips, insurance reminders, like so much value that BDMs and property. I'm like, when someone comes to me, Adam says, I'm stuck on ideas. I'm like, how? How are you stuck on ideas when, if we look at our profession as property management and how much we do and how much I see people complaining all the time on how much we actually have to do? I'm like, how are you stuck on ideas? And not just sharing, I think also the glamorous stuff. I think that we need to get real on just sharing the real stuff as an industry. And I did a post a couple of weeks ago and I was really surprised it went viral, but I was like speaking from the heart about how much complexity there is now in property management, how much
Mm,
responsibility is on
mm.
us now as individuals. And I was a bit like, fuck you to our government too, I'm not going to lie. But it was like, there's so much to share. And it's asking your your clients at the same time to engage. What's your opinion? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing right now? We want to hear from you to get those replies back in your emails, not just putting stuff out there and just for the sake of it, like getting people to actually engage, being like, thanks, Adam, for sharing that. That was really useful. Like, hey, great
There's so
answer.
much you can do. There's so
So
much to share.
much.
There's so many ideas. Again, go to ChatGPT and say, give me 100 ideas of what I can share with people. One thing that the best people do, and I've seen this a lot, is they actually have a library in their email or notes, and that library is ideas to share.
Mm,
And what they do is every time they see an article, they see something in the paper, they see a video, something on social media, something just pops into their head, they actually put it in there. And I've actually got one of these from my content, and
mm.
I've got
Same.
probably 100 things in my ideas to share folder. And when I'm doing filming with my guy, which I've just started doing a few weeks ago, as you know, my social media company, I'll actually open that folder and I'll go, okay, I've got 100 things. Is this one appropriate? No, I don't want to do that one. I'm not feeling that. Or this one's
Mhm.
not appropriate. But I know that there's so much content there because I've created, I don't have to remember it. I've created this
Yes.
library. So it's all in there and I can just refer to it whenever I want. So I
Yeah.
would say to your clients, anytime you think of something or think of an idea, just jot it down. You don't have to have the answer for it, but just jot it down and just
Yeah.
put it in there so you can come back to it.
Yeah, another thing that I love is so I have this thing in my calendar every Friday, and it's called the Rise Factor. Thanks to my speaking coach, she recommended this, and it was on a Friday to spend an hour and compile stories from the week. So it could be like screenshots in your phone
Love
or
it.
testimonials or problems that you solved, and then you write it down like in a journal, so that when you are doing that content it is authentic. You don't have to rely on ChatGPT then for the ideas. The ideas have come through you and you can speak in flow. And I think we need to see more of that, right? Like I'm all for ChatGPT and Claude and AI or whatever helping, but I think let's actually use real case examples, real case stories that have happened and just you
Are you
consciously.
suggesting are you suggesting people use their brain?
I am 100% suggesting people
Wow.
use their brains. Yes,
That's
we got to do
revolutionary
that.
today.
We got to do that. Look, I
Since
think
AI, that's revolutionary.
there's
Wow,
always
that's
a place
crazy.
for AI, but I think in property management, it is personal. Like we can't say that it's not personal. We're dealing with people's lives, we're dealing with people's homes, and I really want to see more of that shine. All right, last like 5 minutes, Adam. The metrics. What numbers do you think that BDMs should actually be tracking?
I think 100% they should be tracking how many leads they're getting and how many doors they're getting. And I think that they should be tracking how many leads they're getting from call-ins and from
Mm-hmm.
how many from salespeople and how many organically from their own prospecting.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this is because I see some BDMs who list a lot of property and they do a lot of appraisals. They might do 20 a month, whatever the number is, and forget if I've got the numbers right or wrong. But when I say to them, how many came from your own prospecting, it's 1 out of 20 or 0 out of 20. So
Mm.
I think it's very, very important to track where they're coming from, where these leads are coming from. I think the other number that's really important to track is appraisals to list ratio.
Yeah.
It's
Conversion.
so important because if you're doing 20 appraisals and you're only getting 1 out of 20, there's a skill set problem that you need to train yourself on.
Yeah.
Um, the other metric that I think is really important which goes in between that, is how many appraisals have you done? How many have actually listed with someone? And then how many of those did you get versus miss? Because if they didn't list with anyone, then they're not lost. So I think
Yeah.
that middle piece is very important.
Yeah.
But you've got to know your numbers and you've got to be really honest. I think that, if you're doing 20 and 10 of them have listed and you've listed 2 out of those 10, you've got to be big enough and good enough to go, I need to brush up on my skills and improve my skill set.
Sure.
So I think they're the main numbers. Your opportunities and your wins and your losses.
Yeah. I think what I always refer back to is what gets measured actually gets improved. And so you can't just track the activity. You need to also track the outcomes from your activity. And one thing that I would love to see, Adam, with BDMs, and I hope that there's some organizations that listen to this podcast. I would love to see
Let's hope so.
Let's hope so. Let's hope this goes viral. I want to see, as part of the questions that is asked when BDM submit an award, is how many listings they got were organic, or like from prospecting, and how many were just from internal. Because I know that some BDMs that are high performers, and I'm not degrading this at all. Please, BDMs, if you're listening and if you're doing a high volume of listings and leads are coming in internally from your sales team, I'm not discrediting that. I know how hard it is to actually work to get the listing. However, I know some BDMs that are doing half of the numbers that these high performer BDMs are doing, and they're doing it from prospecting, getting in the trenches, hunting for business. And so I think there needs to be more awareness into looking at underneath the numbers, like what you said. Are they just getting the leads in internally? Where are they coming from? Or is it a mix of like what we call as self-generated, listings and leads that are coming in from the office, and breaking that down? Because I think a BDMs, we all can get into comparison mode sometime, but BDMs looking at agencies and they're doing, 100 plus listings a month, but they've got, a certain lead source that is feeding them leads and they're closing them, versus someone that's doing 20 a month and is not perceived as being as high performing as the ones that are doing 100.
It's all relative.
I'm working that so relative, and I want to bring more awareness in this to it. Because it's not.
No,
right.
I agree. And that importance of prospecting, there is no question that, and maybe you can tell me if it's already happening or not, but rent rolls are going to shrink. And investors are not going to be buying property as much. And we talked about this earlier. Investors are certainly going to stay away from the market. I'm not talking about all investors. There are opportunities to buy. And as I've said earlier, if the property prices are cheaper, there's opportunities. But a lot of investors, I'm finding in my trail, speaking to sales agents, there's a lot more investors off their rent roll who are now looking at selling those properties. They're finding it too hard to sell, and it's too hard to keep and maintain. Also, with the changes to capital gains tax, they're going to be hit with a big bill when they sell it later on. So there's a lot of landlords I'm finding now are looking at selling their properties now. That being the case, rent rolls are going to shrink, not dramatically, but they will shrink. So the importance of prospecting and replenishing the losses has never been more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. One last question, Adam.
You keep saying that. That's the
first
last question.
I said 5 minutes before I said one last question. Okay. So imagine if I gave every listener 1,000 contacts today, would they know exactly what to do with them?
I would say almost all of them wouldn't, and it's not a reflection on BDMs because it's the same in the sales department. I've worked with literally thousands and thousands of agents and sales agents, and it's probably 5% do it really well, maybe 10% do it okay in terms of database management. The ones that I work with and get in there, I build systems around it, so it's a little bit more automated. But But if you gave me 1,000 properties today, I would be spending a considerable time on entering each record,
Mm,
making sure that data is clean, making sure it's categorized, making sure it's tagged. Are they a landlord of a 1 bedroom? Is it a 2 bedroom? Is it a house? Is it a unit? Is it a villa unit? Is it a 2-story townhouse? I'd be making all of these tags and categories very clear. So
mm,
then you can start doing target marketing. You can say to a potential landlord who's got a 2-story townhouse, you can say, well, at the moment, we really need 2-story townhouse. You can identify those people very clearly and target market rather than blanket market. So
mm.
I'd be putting those 1,000 in very, very carefully, categorizing, tagging, as I say, clean data. I'm repeating myself, and making sure that you're spending time maintaining, because things change, email addresses change, people change when work. So
Yeah.
you've got to spend time maintaining, and every time you get a bounce back email, do something with that.
Yeah. Call
Look at that
them.
and update it. Don't just ignore
Yeah.
it and delete it. Clean it up. Speak to
Yeah.
them. Call them. Your emails change. If you change jobs, what's going on for you?
Yeah, for sure. Adam, thank you so much today. Like
Last
we
question.
covered mindset, we covered opportunities, things that are happening in the market, we covered execution, measurement, so much gold in this episode. And I'm
We
so
covered we covered dogs and cavaliers, but maybe that was before you pressed
dogs and
record.
Cavaliers before we went on air. But look, it's been a pleasure having you on, and cannot wait to see you in like, oh my God, 3 weeks at the BDM Summit. For everyone listening and who is joining us, please make sure you come and say hi to Adam on the day, and you are going to be in for a treat for his keynote session. So thank you, Adam, for joining us and giving your wisdom to our BDM and property management community. And I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thank you. Good to connect again.
Welcome. Well, as always, to our listeners, keep rising.